Okay. So thank you for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here, and I'm also looking forward to the discussion. Especially, I'm interested in feedback by those of you who work closely with the Global Brain Institute. Yeah. So the Global Brain was a long time ago an issue with me, and I remember, I think in 1996, when we had the FIS conference in Vienna, there was Tom Stonia, and he talked about the global brain, and we had deep discussions, and also together with his wife, because his wife said, "Oh, my dear, my husband is a blue-eyed man, and he's very optimistic, she's not so optimistic." And I said, well, I tried to reconcile the two, and unfortunately Tom Stonia died 2 years after this, and he did not publish a book which I was very interested in on, let's say, the application of his theory of a global brain to peace and war. So, and I don't know where the manuscript is, and I tried to get it and publish it, but there was no idea. So maybe I have to speak a little bit on my background. I'm associate professor at Vienna University of Technology, and there I'm working in the department of, well, we call it Faculty of Informatics. 10 years ago it was called computer science, but it hasn't changed anything, so it's now called informatics, which is good, because this means that it includes also other things than only hardcore computer science. And the institute I'm working there with is called Institute for Design and Assessment of Technology. And that is, I have a Vienna docendi in technology assessment, and so I have a place there still, but I'm a little bit pessimistic, I would say now, because in 5 years I will go in pension and I will not be replaced. So, and also the topic will not be replaced, and I'm not the only one who has this topic at this faculty. And yes, I had worked at the university. I began to study systems sciences, and now I'm in this field of philosophy of systems. And also I'm working with the information concept, and I'm heading a group since long, well, it's long, 10 years so far, 12 years, on unified theory of information, and I published a book on that this year. So, yeah, and as to the affiliation, you will see that the Bertalanffy Center for the Study of Systems Science, which is an association by Austrian law, and I can give you my business card just for going around here. It's beautiful. And we are doing conferences like the European Meetings on Cybernetics and Systems Research, which have been done since the 1970s in Austria, always in Vienna, every 2 years. And we are now having a kind of change in the generation which takes part in the conference. And we try to establish a platform of different systems approaches and to discuss the different foundations we have. So, for instance, there is cybernetics, which says we come first because systems theory is something which came later, and cybernetics is not a systems theory. There is complex systems, a representative of them said at the last conference, I have no idea about systems theory. So you see there are difficulties of the different communities to discuss with each other and to come into to exchange not only knowledge but also to think about the foundations and to think if it might be possible to find common grounds. So, and this is what we try to foster with this Bertalanffy Center. And other affiliation here, the International Society for Information Studies, is also an association which was founded very recently, and we tried to establish a platform there for all those who work with the information stuff. That is, so many, well, information is a concept that has this, which has propagated into every science, I would say, every discipline now. And though there are different approaches, different applications of the term, and so we try to find out if it would not be good to have also a platform to discuss this between different disciplines, because we think that transdisciplinarity is an imperative of our time, and therefore we should also think about this. And why is it that our society is called Information Society, and why do we have this subject in so many fields? So this is also something we are dealing with. Okay, and the topic of today is just on the interface between these two things. This is what I would like to talk about. So first a little bit I would like to tell you my personal approach, which is a critical social systems theory approach, which I would call it. Yeah? That is a mixture between social systems and critical theory. Second, I will talk about that which I baptized Global Sustainable Information Society, the abbreviation of which is GSIS. And you see it's like a vision. And I will talk about this because I want to talk about the global brain from the perspective of GSIS. Yeah, and third, I will come to some conclusions, if I have some, about the global brain. What are the implications of the GSIS vision for the global brain? So let me begin with my approach, which is critical social systems theory. So every science, every discipline can be, for every discipline you can list 3 different contexts in which it has to produce and in which it has to perform. I call it in short aims, scope and tools. So that is, you have the kind of, well, in philosophy we would say the first category is praxeology, and for me that includes ethics and axiology and so on, and aesthetics, for instance. The scope is the ontological realm. So that is what is it about, what is the object of study, and the tools is what is the method of study, so how do you do the study. Okay, so the critical approach, what does it mean on these 3 levels? The first level, so what are the aims of a critical social systems theory? I would say it is the aim is to contribute to what social scientists like to call revolution. And what is a revolution? In these terms, it is the sublation of antagonisms which originate from heteronomy, and it does so by can and should do so by providing knowledge of concrete utopias. So what does this mean? Sublation is clear to everybody? This is dialectical thinking, and sublation is this figure in which you come, let's say, from a thesis and an antithesis to a synthesis. Yeah? This is the third step which you are doing in order to resolve the problem you have, the contradiction. Yeah? This is called sublation. Sublation is I was told so that sublation is the right term to use for this dialectical way of framing this. So antagonisms are contradictions which are very strong, and heteronomy is the regime of power, of people who have power. Is a regime of domination. There are dominions, so to speak. Yeah? And the dominion, that means that there is a part of society or of elements of society who can use other parts of society for their own purposes, and that is which is detrimental to the other part of society. That is, which is only of advantage to them. So it's a kind of zero-sum play. Yeah? So this is how I would like to define heteronomy. And a critical theory should always discuss and study their own subject from that point of view. That is, how can we provide knowledge in order to get by with these dominions and powers in society? And how can we now get knowledge of concrete utopia? What is concrete utopia? So you might be aware of a term which is called utopianism, which means, it's very idealistic. What you want to say has nothing to do with reality, and so shut up, so to speak. Yeah? Because it does not has not to do anything with our reality. Ernst Bloch was a philosopher who really was challenged by this argument, and he said, of course, if we want to develop utopias, then these utopias must be rooted in the here and now, that is, in reality as it is now. There must be a connection. If you don't have a connection, then I would say now, today, it might appear what Karl Popper said, that if you want to bring heaven to earth, it might result in blood and in violence. Yeah? So if you want to do this, if you think I can do this without any roots in the here and now. And so Ernst Bloch said it must be a concrete utopia, not an abstract one. An abstract one has no affiliation to reality, but the ones that are rooted in our here and now, these are the ones which we can try to realize. You know? And I will give them later. Yeah.
What is now the connection between utopia and revolution?
Utopia and
revolution.
Yeah, if you come from here and now to another, to a utopia, which is very different, which has a different quality, then you have a leap in quality, and that leap in quality is sometimes called revolution. And revolution means it is a reworking of the whole of reality according to another principle. So, and then you have the whole reality is shaped according to a new principle. And this is a revolution, which means that it has to, you turn upside down, so to speak, which means it's a qualitative leap. or as we say in complex systems thinking, it's emergence. The scope is then implied by this aim, which means if you look at society, you look on how agency and structure are related to each other. And they are related in a dynamical way, which is called in a philosophical term also dialectic. So you have an interplay of, let's say, individual and society. Yeah, this is, for instance, every sociology is about this topic. How do these two things hang together? How can we conceptualize it? And so far you would, you say you have, on the one hand, you have Handlungstheory, that is theories on the subject, theories on action of actors, and on the other hand you have structuralism, for instance. They talk about structure. And then the most sociology is about how to combine them. And this is the big problem, and this is very good if you see this as a problem and try to conceptualize it. This would already be a property of being critical. And the tools is everything you do. For instance, if you would do empirical studies, you should put all these phenomena in a wider context, in a bigger context. You should see the big picture. And the big picture in philosophy is called totality. Yeah? That is, you should recognize totality, but also history, because totality is not given for one moment and forever, and for eternity it is always changing. Therefore, history, because all these things are changing. So, this is what I would call a critical stance in every science that deals with society. And what is now the appropriate part in systems theory? So, as to the aims, it means you look at the transformation of social systems into higher order states. And these higher order states are based upon scientific anticipations of sustainable future states. Yeah, that's the translation of the left side for systems theory. If this is systems theory is doing, then it is, I would call it a critical social systems theory. The scope is then social systems as self-organization, because agency and structure, if it is a dialectic, in systems terms, it is self-organization. It's a kind of feedback loop in which actors give rise to emergent organizational relations. And these relations have a downward causation, which means they constrain or enable the actors in turn. And so you have a feedback loop, a kind of mechanism. Some sociologists say, I don't like the term mechanism, dynamism, which shows by which you can understand how a society works. Please.
To this one first point, the aims on systemism.
Yeah.
On the aims, these sustainable future states.
Yeah.
Higher order states. Can you give me perhaps some example?
What you like to have in future is a sustainable state of society. Sustainable means it should work, it should not break down, and then you can think of when does it break down? Is it only because of ecology? Is it only because of nature, climate catastrophe, or are there other things like uneven distributions of wealth, which also make society not sustainable?
Okay.
No? Because then you will always have fights, which might...
What do you mean with higher order?
Higher order. Okay, I will show it.
Not other order.
Higher. I will come in the next slide, just to that topic, okay? Well, let me say one sentence already now. Higher order means it's another order which is emerging, but this new order is an order which can help the system or the new system fulfill the purposes of the older system better, in a better way, and can do more. Huh? Maybe just a kind of yeah. But I think if I will show the slides, you will better understand what I mean. So second, the scope I have talked about this. Third, putting observations in the context of social systems and their development or evolution. Yeah. So everything you are doing, if you do empirical studies, also they should be put into such a context. Otherwise, it does not make much sense. Yeah. There is so much empiricism. Empiricism means you just try to find out empirically certain things, and then you ask, why the hell is somebody interested in that? Okay, so what does it mean? Designing the future. So this is a model in which I try to have evolution on the one hand, and I have hierarchy on the other hand. That is, I see what happens in time change, and I see what happens if I look at it synchronically. Yeah, that is, what is the structure of it. So, if we have now this kind of evolution and we say, okay, this is what we have now, this is the actual in philosophy, okay? And we have now the here and now. But there's also a potential that is always with reality, with something which is real, there is a potential given. That is, there is a realm of possibilities which are rooted in this reality. Yeah? Therefore, it's a potential. And what can happen later must be a part of this potential, because other things cannot happen. And now comes the important point of philosophy and of critical philosophy, of critical theory. It is up to us to decide upon this. That is, we have to select out of the potential those alternatives we would like to see realized. And this is what we should do. And we should select on this. Yeah?
Is this potential different from your concrete utopia?
No, this is just showing what is concrete utopia.
Okay.
Just another question.
So you see here that if you look about the possible future, so this is what Ernst Bloch called the not yet. The not yet is something which is not yet realized, which is not yet actualized now, but which is part of the current potential. So for instance, if you work on the global brain and if you see certain phenomena which already fit into this global brain idea, then you would say, okay, these are things which foreshadow the global brain which is to come, or which we would like to have, which we would like to come. Yeah? So, and this means here you have a leap in quality. Therefore, you have here now something which emerges, which is something new, because it is realized from that realm of potentiality. But this is not enough. What we also want to do is, we have to think about what do we select and why do we select it. And this is the second thing. There's another leap in quality. And that means that we have a kind of leap from the less good to the better. We see what actually is now realized is not as good as we would like to have in the future. So we have to qualify that what we would like to have in the future is better. So we always try to improve it. Therefore, we have also here a leap in quality. And there's also then the other way around. In that direction, in the evolutionary direction, we just say, okay, one thing that is possible will be realized in future. But what we say here is we need something which is better, and therefore it is also higher, it is on a higher level. And that higher level then will shape what is here and now. That is, it will take all that stuff with it, it will maybe modify it in a great way, it will wipe out certain traits, it will maybe amplify certain traits, and it will give the whole a new structure. And that's the whole. The whole of the new future is now, let's say, in two levels. And this is called, well, re-ontologization is a term I take from Luciano Floridi. So, there were, yeah, please?
What are the assumptions according to which it is decided what is less good and better in this scheme? How do you know?
Yeah, this is just on a very abstract philosophical level. It's not yet said what is good. But I will come to this in the second part when I talk about the global sustainable information society. I will have some criteria of what is good. But I think I talked about criticism. So if I have a critical stance, then everything is good which has less domination.
Okay.
Yeah?
And another question, the potential to be selected. All potentials are already concrete, or they
Yes.
are? So they are concrete in the sense that they are not yet realized, but we know what they are. So
Yes.
everybody is...
We can also have certain things which foreshadow a bad future. So if we think about Le Pen and all this movement in Europe to the right wing, to the populist right wing, this means there's a rise. So if you look at the quantity, also in Austria, it's incredible. I can tell you that in Austria, if you count all votes together, we had votes some months ago or so. It's the highest number. It's 30%, which are on the far right. 30% of my fellow Austrians. Okay? And I could also say this is also a potential. If we don't do anything against this, next time the party leader of the so-called FPÖ, Freiheitliche Partei, could really become Bundeskanzler, Chancellor. Because the parties which are now still in power, the Social Democrats and the Christian Democrats, they have shrinked. And they shrink because they do such a policy which nobody likes. And they don't do really a good policy. Therefore, the populists can say, okay, we will do it. Of course, they won't do it. Because if you look in the if you look at in between the lines, you will see they just also would like to serve the financial capital. They say the opposite, but they don't do it. If you look, we have now in Austria also corruption trials. And now we have the first Verurteilungen. Verurteilung, the first judges. The judgments, the first judgments. And for instance, one was Minister of Interior, and he is now judged to, sentenced for 4 years, unbedingt, obligatory into the jail. Yeah? Very good, but unfortunately, they made a mistake in the judgment, and now they begin from the beginning. Yeah, so it's okay. Okay, that is to say, we have also bad things which look through the curtain. If we would say there's a curtain and we look into the future, so we also have bad things. Therefore, it is us to decide, and we have to do this. Yeah, please.
The future is in that direction?
Yes. That's the time. Sorry, this is the arrow. This is the arrow, yeah?
No, okay.
Timeline here, and this is the level of priorities. the
understood.
the ladder of layers. Yeah.
Does this not imply what you're just mentioning, what he's asking in terms of how you define the better, because they have the better potential, or they projected that potential, so they create an image which they try to achieve, and
Yeah.
then get your antagonism with the other who doesn't have the same image, and they have a perfect dialectic. So how do you solve that? It's a matter of power and the masses.
Yeah, it might be a power of getting hegemony in thinking as precondition to act. Yeah, and this is what we need to do.
So that's in the method.
Sorry?
That's in the method, in the third dimension that you mentioned, aim,
Yeah.
scope, method.
So method. Well, the method of science. It's now the method of how to act in reality. So this is something different. Yeah. All of that stuff is just to have a concept of how should we work as scientists in society. Okay. So then I go on to this slide. The evolutionary system stage model. So it's the same here. So you see in a phase n you have certain systems. Also, let's qualify them n, and you have a space of possibilities. And then you have to, somebody selects here in order to make one possibility real. And this new realized possibility is then a new organizational relation, or a new structure. That is, the important insight of systems theory is that new things come into being only through the establishment of new relations. You change the relationships. So, for instance, if you think about, well, the next slide will be about physics and chemistry and biology. So it's not the case that in biology you have biological matter, which is different from physical matter and chemical matter. It's the same. What has changed is just the structure, the relationship between them. And this makes new systems. So you have here this kind of leap in quality, which I would like to call complexification. That is, it gets more complex. That means it gets a new level. And this level are the new relations. And these new relationships now relate all these systems here as elements together to be elements of this new system. Okay? So this will be phase of n+1. And so you have the levels. So here you have the chart which shows that you have evolution on the one hand, but you also have the hierarchy on the other hand. And now let's come to technology and society. There's no glass water, huh? No? Okay. Glass of water. Somebody. Water would be there, but maybe a glass. Just a cup. What about juice? We don't have a cup. Okay. No, thank you. I will try to we will show. We will see how long I can. So, I just talked about this. So, if we look at the whole universe development or evolution, we can see so far, we usually try to categorize it into physics and chemistry, into biology, and into the social stuff. Okay? So, and you can say, okay, there is a kind of coming into being of physical and chemical entities. I call them inert, which is not maybe a good term, because self-organization is an inherent property of every system in the universe. There are exemptions if you have mechanical systems, if you build mechanical systems, or if there are systems which have no chance then only to have one option. But normally this is not the case, because everything is agents. There's everywhere agency in our universe. So then we have this big leap in quality, which then gets us living matter. And you see that this so-called inert matter is part of the living matter. For instance, if you think about Vernadsky, who talked about the biosphere, and the biosphere is not only the living matter, which is living bodies or organisms and their mass, but also it includes all the matter they are exchanging with the Earth. So there are big ecological cycles, and this belongs also to the biosphere, because it is something that is due to what living matter does with the with the geosphere, so to speak. Yeah. Now, if we come now to the social realm, that is the human societies, then we have this process which is called anthroposociogenesis, that is together with human society appeared, and you see that living matter is then gets a new property. It is the living Umwelt, and it is also included, not here in the term, but it is also our nature. So we have nature, we are biotic systems, okay. And you have artifacts then. So what you find on Earth, more and more gets into artifacts. So, and now comes the question of technology in society. What about the technological trends? And if we think about ICTs and what they are doing with us. So this was a term, virtual community, it was coined, I forgot, I think in the 90s, the last century, by Howard Rheingold. And he said, with a computer we can try to build new communities within our society. And this is something very new. So this is therefore still a good term just for talking about communities of interest or communities of action or collectives which are brought together by ICTs. On the second level, that is on the level of the biosphere, we have now the potential, or let's say this is a kind of forecast, we can try to make all these organisms, not only us, but all the other organisms, part of a so-called infosphere. This is also an idea, and this term I also learned from Luciano Floridi. He talked about the inforgs, informational organisms. Yeah? That is, it begins with that your cat has a chip implanted by the doctor and so on. Yeah? Third thing is what he called IT entities. Yeah? So this is a term to show that there are identities. That is, the inert matter gets an identity. The room, when you come home, speaks to you. And he finds out that you are in a bad mood, and then he gives you music which you like, because the room knows already that you like it. And so on and so on. So it is like, it's behaving like agent. Yeah? Therefore, there are kind of identities, and it is IT. Basically, it is IT. That is, all the physical stuff in our surrounding will also be chipped and will also be networked, and we will have a big network that is an infosphere which comprises all of that stuff. And if you are not connected to it, then you will be lost. So this gives also ethical questions to the future. So this is just a forecast of what the technologies are about now. But will this lead automatically to a global brain? And is it that what we want? And I would say no. Therefore, my big question mark is the following. We need to see this as another meta-system and super-system transition, that is, as another leap in quality, in order to make sense of the whole. And that means we need to come to a global sustainable information society And within a global sustainable information society, all these technological developments make sense. That is, the virtual communities would become the global brain intelligence. And the inforks, they would get infork intelligence. And what we have is the artifacts which are chipped and which are connected to the infosphere. It is called today already ambient intelligence. So you see, this is also something which might be smooth. And this new development could be called neurogenesis, because a new level needs to be established, or would be established, which is noosphere. This is a term which I have from Vernadsky, but there were also other people like Théa de Chardin and French philosophers who talked about this. And but I like the notion of Vernadsky best because he's not an idealist, but he was a scientist, and he thought about these things in a scientific way. So, and nous, this is from Greek, and this means mind and reason. So, now we come to the second
Question.
part.
This
Yes?
neurogenesis, is this artificial neurogenesis or natural?
Genesis means the becoming of.
Yeah.
And this means the becoming of a new step in evolution, including all our mankind, which means that we, I think I would say, behave like the global brain as Francis would like to have it.
But is this, again, is this artificial neurogenesis or is this the side of the question?
As Francis says, it is partly artificial and partly it is us. So it is both of us. And the interesting thing is to say that it is still us. We are
The founder.
the founder, and we are still those people who will have the say, because the artificial thing is nothing that will overcome us. There is no danger, so to
Is
speak.
there anything artificial actually in it?
In what?
In the whole system? Can you talk about actually artificial neurogenesis? Is this not just intellectual knowledge, our autogenesis, neurogenesis?
Or are you?
Or is artificial by definition of the product of our mind anyway? So.
Artificial is, yeah, maybe the product of our mind, yeah, that's maybe good, yeah. But this does not mean that it is not natural, because everything what we do is, you see, we have a big, this is a big tail here, so everything is nature here. All of that is nature. It's just nature with a new quality. And therefore, we are nature with a new quality, and if we develop further, and if we evolve, it's also nature with another quality. That is, the important thing is here, that now we come into the, we now cross the point on which evolution is not yet so far developing behind our backs. It is that we can try to influence evolution, because we can take evolution somehow in our hands, yeah? And that is then artificial, but it is still nature, because nature in us makes it possible to reflect on itself and to turn another spiral in the evolution. Okay? So, but I think what I have to tell you now is, I come to the second chapter, that is, what is now this Global Sustainable Information Society about? Huh? What is it? So, I call the situation we are in the great bifurcation. Bifurcation means that there are different paths that can be taken by a system, the evolution of the system. And what we see here is that there are things which cannot happen. You know, this is outside of the space of possibilities. And inside you might have many trajectories, many possible ways of going on. But the system here has to decide which way to go on. Yeah? And if you don't think about it, it will somehow do. But the problem is you can look at certain amplifications before. And this is what we now see as crisis in our society, in our social development, or in the cultural development, or in the civilizational development. We have crises everywhere. Crises are abound now. And that means that we might have to change something. For instance, if you think about the climate change, nobody knows if we have not already reached here the tipping point and have already taken some path, which means that the aim of having the increase in temperature below 2 degrees centigrade by the end of the century might be an illusion only. Yeah? It might be that we are still here, or maybe 5 minutes before 12 or whatever. So we do not exactly know. But the system will do something, and we also need to do something. So if we think about the whole thing of our, let's say, social system and how it is shaped totally by the global power, then a possible way out of the current crisis might be this, which is somewhere in the middle. That is, we have financial problems. That is, we see that it is the financial capital that is now the one who has caused on the surface the latest developments, and which is now on the edge of this. And now those who are in power say, okay, then we have to do some regulations. But I think they just want to do certain regulations, but not to change many things, not to make a big change, not to make a revolution. Revolution would be if you take the upper thing, yeah. And this is, we are now heading the global challenges. I will tell you what it is about, and the possible resolution to the global challenges is to have a global sustainable information society. The other way, which is this here, is that the system diminishes, the system turns down. That is, they fall apart, and we might even face the end of humanity on Earth, or at least of civilized life on Earth, at least for a certain period, which might be called barbarism. Global challenges are those who affect all humanity and the survival of all humanity, and they can successfully be treated only by humanity as a whole. That's how they are defined. And you see them in all spheres with which philosophy has dealt with. Philosophy is the theory of the relationship between man and world. So, what is it? We have man and society, we have man and nature, and we have man and technology. And in all these fields, we are now facing big problems, which are called global challenges. So, in the first sphere, in the social sphere, we see parochial cultures, nationalism, fundamentalism, and so on. As to the cultural aspect, if you go to the political aspect, you see authoritarian rule or technocratic rule. Technocratic rule, for instance, in Italy, for instance. And in the economical sphere, you see uneven distribution of wealth, uneven distribution of chances for development, and so on. And all that mingles up, and it it's a question how these things can be solved. Humans and nature, you see the degradation and the pollution of the environment, and humans and technology, you have warfare with with cyber war and so on, and we have also high-risk technologies. That is, complexity has risen in a way in which our current societies cannot deal with it. That is, they have to catch up with that complexity. And they can catch up this complexity only by an informationalized, sustainabilized, and globalized social system. That is a system that is existent on a planetary scale, that is, it must be global. Second, it must be capable of acting upon the dangers of anthropogenic breakdown. Anthropogenic means caused by men. Then it is sustainable, that is, it can deal with the own failures. And this means it must also be capacitated to create requisite knowledge. And that means information. Information society is just a term for we need this information to know how to deal with the global challenges and how to restructure the mechanisms on which our society works, the whole of society is working. And therefore we need ICTs. This is just, sorry? Information and communication technology.
No, I said less ICT.
So you say less ICT.
Parentheses, yeah.
I think this will not be the solution, but what we need is ICTs for the let's see, ICTs for peace, or ICTs for development, ICTs for sustainability, and so
I
on.
mean, other ICTs.
Yes, more or less other ICTs, yeah? But I will come to that in short. As to the first issue, globality, world society is a higher order organization of societal systems. So what we need is world society. Yeah, it can catch up the complexity that ensues from civilization's own development if it provides unity or diversity. So what we need is a higher order. So you asked what is higher order? Higher order means that all, let's say, all partitions of humanity today, which are mostly nation states, and that they have to build something new. They have to build a new system of governance, new rules of how to behave, of how to relate to each other. And this is the new world society. This does not mean that we need one state on the whole world, or one federal state, and one government, one world government. This is, I think, the wrong way to go. What we need is to think about self-organization, what does it mean to us, and how can we help self-organize the nation states of today into a higher order that guarantees then that we don't have war, that guarantees that we don't have a climate catastrophe, and so on, and so on, and so on.
That higher order is your new sphere?
Sorry?
That higher order is your new sphere then?
Yes. If we master it, then we are in the noosphere.
Okay.
Yeah. If we don't do it, then we are still silly, and we might have been too silly, and we will die out. That's interesting as to cosmology. There are certain experts that say, why didn't we so far find any contact in the outer cosmos of any other civilization, of other living beings or whatever, of other self-organizing systems? And they say they might have been too silly and they died out. But this might happen to us maybe too. Yeah.
Can you say a few more words about unity through diversity? What is meant by this?
Unity through diversity is a kind of, I would say, also dialectical principle. If you see it from philosophy point of view. It's also a systems principle, which is said that which is attributed to Ludwig von Bertalanffy. And the idea is that first you have a hierarchical way of relating systems to each other. That is, you have levels, nothing else. Hierarchy, in that sense, does not mean that you have power, that you have domination and so on, or zero sum. It just means you have levels. And any system has two levels, at least two levels, a macro level and a micro level. On the micro level you have the agent, and on the macro level you have the structure of the system. The whole thing is the system. The system contains these two things.
Okay.
And unity through diversity means that the system is very there is a bandwidth of how the relationship between the structure and the differences of the agents are to be seen. So if you look, for instance, in biological systems, at an organism, for instance, then you will see that there is a kind of harmony, which means that you have organs in your body, and the organ cannot say, okay, goodbye, I'm not interested in being part of your body anymore. You have cancer. Yeah? This is something which might be addressed in that way, but the whole thing is that all of them are very diverse, but it's a kind of division of functions, and they work together in order to support the whole system. And the system as a whole also supports the unit of the system. So there's a feedback loop, which means it is very smooth, or it should be smooth, or you can smoothen it. Yeah. If you talk about social systems, we can have a dictatorship, for instance, which means there is power, there's authoritative rule, and so on, which is a kind of friction in the system. It's still a self-organized system, but there is a friction, and this friction means it does not work well. It could work better if there would be no friction. And this unity through diversity means the ideal concept of where to go by a systems theoretical point of view. That is to have a kind of harmony between both levels. And unity through diversity is more than unity in diversity. Yeah? If you talk only about unity in diversity, that means, okay, I see I have diversity, but in all of this diversity there is unity. And this might be then the wrong idea, because you say, I have only this, and this would be maybe a benevolent dictatorship or whatever. But what you would need to say is the opposite, and I guess that Bertalanffy was in some articles saying this. You need to know and accept all this diversity on the bottom level. And unity cannot be done without all of them. It needs the diversity to get unity. That means we have to. It is an advantage to talk about this. An article comes to my mind of a liberal journalist in our country. She said, well, things have changed much in our society. When she was young, she worked at the Brunnenmarkt or the Viktor Adler market in Vienna, and all of them were so-called Austrians, German-speaking people. Yeah? And this is what people are accustomed to. And just the Viktor Adler Markt is located in the 10th district of Vienna. And there is now the Hochburg. We say the populist right-wing party has the most votes there, because there are workers, let's say workers which are not so educated, not well educated in this place, and they grow old, and they have been overrun, they say, by foreigners. That is, immigrants of Turkey, mostly Turkey, and those countries. And if you now are on the of the Victor Adermark, you have shops which are not the shops anymore you had 30 years ago or 40 years ago. It's like Istanbul. Yeah? And she says, this is an opportunity for us. It's better than before. This diversity is something which helps you, because I can get the old things somewhere else, but I can get now also new things. And therefore it enriches our possibilities to live. And this is how she sees this. This is diversity as a resource also for unity, because I think most of them say we are Austrians. Yeah? So it's still the old Austrians, they say, you are a foreigner. Yeah, okay. Yeah, can I go on? Sustainability. As long as societies could externalize effects at the cost of other societies, their self-organization was compatible with the enclosure of the commons. Okay. I introduce here something new, the commons. Common good. That's interesting in English. So you have the common good is not, that needs not to be a good you can buy, that is a material good. The common good is what is the best for society. Yeah? So it might be democracy, it might be diversity as we had it, yeah, and so on. It's an idea, it's a value. But the value might be also material. That is, common good for society is if you have a proper connection to electricity, for instance. Yeah? If you have good air. And then you can talk about these commons. And commons is something which is not public and which is not private. And I would say commons is what comes first. Why? A social system which is made up of actors who work together and produce something. What they produce is a common product. It's a synergy effect which is materialized in what they are doing. Therefore it is common, and it is a commons. And therefore it should be also be common, that is, that anybody can have access to that what is produced. And this belongs to the critical part of my critical social systems theory. That is, it is the commons now, which is very important. And it is the commons on which and about which is the battle. Are the different battles going on in every sphere of our society, in culture, in politics, in economy, and also in ecology and also in technology. So, and these commons are enclosed, that is, they are made private. And the state tries to have some of them to get it public and to give it to the public. But what we see now with the rule of the financial capital is the opposite. They save the banks, which means this is private money. We help you, we give you more money from us, from the public, in order to survive. And, well, what about the commons? Yeah? So
the banking system itself is the common.
Yeah, sure. We should socialize all this, nationalize. You heard, there's a new term, they said notverstaatlicht. They have, the banks would, by, was heißt Not? Emergency. By emergency they have been, was heißt verstaatlicht?
Nationalized.
Nationalized. They have been nationalized by emergency. And I would say, why then give them back? If we, the public, have to pay all these debts, why then give them back? And sell it again. So this is incredible. So okay. So the banking system is something which is necessary so far, but it could also be nationalized. So far nobody could tell me an argument why a nationalized or national industry or banking system and whatever is so much better than is not as good as the private ones. Yeah.
Also,
everything has been privatized.
It will only move the center of power from banks to states.
Public and private.
it will only move the center of powers from banks to states. It will
Yeah.
not be a big improvement in the overall scheme.
Yeah, but the state, in the banks and in the national economy, you don't have a say because you don't have a democracy. Democracy we only have in the state. So we could try to have democratic influence on what the state does with these goods. But I say commons, it is commons, so it is maybe something different.
Banks are the highest order of democracy. It's purely price and demand, and that is pure democracy.
What is pure democracy?
Banks
Yeah.
is 100% democracy
Why?
because it's based on.
On my money.
Oh, no.
Yeah, but it's not democratic.
The value is price.
You cannot say anything.
Up to when the things are going good. And when things are going bad, that's any more valid.
Yeah. Okay. So this is sustainability. So sustainability is nothing which belongs only to the ecological sphere. Yeah? It pertains to the whole. Oh God. Does somebody has power?
Yes, I do.
Okay. It's
I
long.
need it myself.
I forgot it. I thought I would do it in. Okay, thank you. Very good. I thought that some of you will have a Macintosh. Okay. Great, it works. Okay, it works. Thank you. So, okay, wiedergeben. Sorry. Okay, so I don't know. Okay. Okay, so new definition of sustainability. Now I come to the most important thing. Informationality. What does it mean? Informationalization. This is how I call it. I'm sorry for this odd term. It's a process of raising the problem-solving capacity of the nascent world society to a level that allows for successfully tackling the problems that arise from society's own development. Okay? That is, it is here without technology. It is saying what is the role of information in this global sustainable information society. It means we need that information that helps us to deal with the challenges we have. Okay?
Would it be correct to say that it is like a cognitive development on
Yeah.
society's level?
Yes.
Okay.
Not only cognitive, I will show that it is more. But maybe on the societal level it might be cognitive, yeah. But it includes communicative and cooperative development on the level of the agents. And informationalization is based upon informatization, or can be based upon informatization. I did not coin. This is a term which is really scientific. It was coined by Alain Monk in the 70s or so, a French sociologist. And he said informatization is the spread of ICTs, and ICTs make society more and more responsive to information. Yeah, so it is less and less friction, so to speak. Yeah, but informatization has to be tamed. This is my big issue here. Yeah, so as to be harnessed for informationalization. Yeah, that is, the one is the instrument for the other. Informatization does not make sense if we just have new applications for our smartphone in which we can make games or whatever. This is not what helps us. What should be done is we should do applications that help us by getting these informations that help society to survive and to come to a better society and a humane society. Why? Because informatization, let alone, it reinforces existing dislocations. Dislocation is antagonism or contradictions, conflicts in society. Yeah? It spans new dislocations. That is, it has also new ones under the current political, economic, and so on conditions. And on the other hand, it can also provide the potential for informationalization and for sustainabilization and for globalization. So I have 3 examples which I would like to. One example, which is a very long discussion in the literature on ICTs in society, is about bonding. That is, do social networking sites or do all this internet stuff, does it help to get deeper connections with other people? And the empirical evidence is rather no. What it helps you to get is to get relations to many people which are on a very superficial level. And that is, the social networking sites are, you can opt out. You get in contact with somebody, and if you don't need the contact anymore for your private ideas or whatever, then you can opt out and you don't say goodbye, you just don't appear and you don't respond again to the email, for instance, or whatever. So this is one problem. So what we need for a global brain or for this global sustainable information society is to get a new bonding between the people.
Does it mean without ability to get out?
It should not be a sectarian thing, but we should not opt out of the possibility or the necessity to help society to survive. I remember when I started my career at the university, we had a course for students in which we were, I think, 10 or so course leaders from different universities and different disciplines. I was then from the technical university, but we were together with philosophers and economists. And the economists, we talked about the global challenges at that time. It was 1991 or so. And he said, okay, given that it is all right that we will face the breakdown of civilization, for instance, ecologically, I don't care about this. I would say, let's make a big party and have all the resources we have and let's use them. And I said, are you crazy? Are you crazy? I cannot understand. And this is the way I would say you should not be able to opt out. I would not like to have this economist teaching at universities and not talking about the dangers we have in society due to several conflicts we face today. Yeah? What I try to teach my students is to think about more than only how to get their life on, how to earn money, and how to get a big car and a good computer and make travels to the Maldives and so on and so on. I would like to have them think about what is their role in that society. How can they try to help to change society to the better? Our university has a motto which says technology for humans. And then it goes on with scientificity and so on. Yeah? Technology for humans, that is the case. And I would not like to have anyone opt out of this. Another example is collective action. So these new media help in the spontaneous formation of swarms and of crowds and so on, but they are volatile. That is, after this leap, they expire and there's nothing else. The problem is, how can you institutionalize this? And there are many there's many research going on. For instance, the Occupy movement, and we are the 99%, and the Indignados in Spain, and wherever. There are so many movements. They used internet and all this stuff and social networking sites and so on, but did it help? No. Why not? One answer might be that on the one hand the technology is not the right technology, therefore we would need other technologies. Therefore I would say the global brain needs other technologies, not these ones. I do not know exactly what ones, but this is what we should think about. And on the other hand, if you look about the movements, you see they are anti-organizational. They did not like organization. There is no speaker of a group in one, for instance, in Zurich. You know, they have the Occupy movement, Occupy Zurich. There is no speaker. The speaker cannot say, I am the speaker of the group. I tell you what we, the group, are thinking. No. Because everybody has a say, and therefore nobody has a say. The group, it does not exist as such. They don't like to be organized. And if you don't like to be organized, then it's also clear that you cannot use technologies. Maybe if there would be other technologies, they would be triggered to organize. No? A student of mine makes a dissertation on the students who in 2009 had the big demonstrations. It's the same with them. Third example, political consciousness. So this is, for instance, the blogosphere. You can read, I think, Gerd Loving is a criticist on... Yeah, and, sorry?
Disinfotainment.
Yeah, disinfotainment is a term from Howard Rheingold. And that means you have not only entertainment, you have not only infotainment, which says, okay, we entertain you, and by that we inform you a little bit. But what they do is they disinform you. Okay, this is what they are doing. And if you look at the blogosphere, it's not better. It's just on a higher level, the antagonism. You have somebody reporting of some war crime or whatever, but you see only this, and this is then blown up like an elephant, and you have just other consequences if you think about this, and you don't see the whole picture. So it does not help. So I think I'm very long. So this is my last. What the global brain must do. How long do I have?
Half an hour.
Half an hour. Still half an hour.
Yeah, but that's with the discussion included. So
Yeah.
if you want to have discussion, you better
Yeah.
finish.
Okay. Shall I? Maybe I hurry on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of you will know this, and I will get only one idea now. It's what is needed in informationalization. What do I mean by that? And I have here a certain topic which I would like to tell you. That is the reflection of what I call the third. So what is the third? The third is thinking about society. So I will show you this. What is social self-organization? This is the basic slide on how to see it. So there's an agent. The agent has agency. That is, it self-organizes. That is, it organizes itself. And that is also this agent has a structure which then constrains him. Let's say it's a he, and also enables him to do something. We have also not only one agent, we have several agents. So we have, let's say, two agents. One is ego, one is alter. Ego and alter. These have an interaction. It's the second thing what they have. So they have self-organized internally, and they have interaction with each other. And now the third thing comes, which is important to make a system. So what they have is they self-organize into a system, and they organize the system themselves, with the result that the system organizes itself in that way that first they co-act together. So there was much in one picture, because this is in a way automatically, instantaneously. They co-act in a certain way, and only if they co-act, then a structure suddenly emerges. Emerges means there's something new. And this is on a new level. This is the macro level where the structure resides. Yeah? And the structure is the third. Therefore, I call it 1, 2, 3. And there is something third in the play. And at the same time as the structure exists, it also exerts influence. It exerts influence on the lower level, on the micro level, by constraints, by enablers. That is the way how the interaction and the actions of the agents is going on. So you have, if this is the whole system, the whole social system, then you have always this way up and down. Yeah? And by up and down, always there are changes possible. Okay? Because it is not deterministic. I now skip the next 3 slides. Where am I? I'm lost. Sorry.
We're making an extragalactic journey.
Sorry?
Will you make an extragalactic journey?
No, no, this is the, sorry. Now I come to the reflexivity. Reflexivity is something which is important, which is a property of humans and of social systems, and it is something that makes us different from animal societies, for instance, and it pertains to cognition and to communication and to cooperation. Cooperation means the up and down level in the big system. Yeah? So that we have these 3, not level, up and down process. Okay. We can have a collective state of reflexivity. That is, if you look about the actors in the structure, then you have a kind of no differentiation between them. This is what we find in tribal communities. Yeah? So we talk of them, there's a we, and they don't have an I. They just feel they are part of the big we. They have myths and they don't question their tradition. Okay? This is the ideal type of collectivist organization of society, which means it's a certain kind of reflexivity which is behind. I will show you on the next slide the reflexivity. The second thing is the opposite, individualism. I have here a new term which I came about in the literature, idiotism. Do you know that idiotes is the one in Greek Athens who did not care about res publica, who just cared about his own, which means he cared about the private things. And there is a literature, a book which is called Idiotism by Neil Curtis, and I read it, so it's very good. He says that the neoliberalism is just taking the privatism to the extremes. And so he says this is idiotism. And this has nothing to do with idiocy. Yeah? But in a way, okay. That means this is really the opposite. That is, you have only individuals. You know Thatcher's famous saying, there is no society, there are only individuals. Okay? And so you have competitive relations of self-regarding I's. That is, in the history of mankind, the I was developed. So also already in Greek, in Greece, in Greek mythology, you find it, Odysseus, and so he was the first one who is said to have an I, which means that you take others, you take advantage of others and try to cheat them and so on. So it's the ideology of the private, and what is done, what we see now, for instance, in our current capitalism, what the whole capitalism is, you have fixed ends, and you do not take into question these aims, that is, you want to gain profit, but the way how you do it can be very different, and you are very very creative to find new means in order to do it. So now we come to the unity through diversity solution to this problem between these two ideal types, which don't suffice. The first doesn't suffice the second one. Therefore I call it commonism, not to be mixed up with communism, or communalism. I found both in the literature. So they think more or less it's about the same. That is, the commons is something which have to be provided. Therefore, you can have a collective which is regarding the individual, and you can have an individual which regards the collective. And therefore, it is an us. So the me and C, the me-C relationship is made by a deviation through the us. So if I think about you and your role, I first think on some higher system we are in, and then I think what might be the role in the system you have, and then I might think of what do you think what I have, which role do I have in the system. Yeah? So it's about scientific reason, and we can also now discuss the ends. So this is the first picture. You remember this was the beginning. We had what is social self-organization, and now what is it now in the first part, the first step, yeah, in collectivism. That is, you have in-sync cooperation, you have in-sync communication, and you have in-sync cognition. Yeah? So it's like we would be inclined to say this is a kind of dictatorship, we don't want this to have. But the people who did this, for instance, the Indian tribes or so, they were lucky. Huh? And so it's not so difficult to, it's not so easy to qualify this, okay? So I think you will get the picture somewhere, and I will go on. So it's just two more slides. So individualism. How is individualism working? Individualism has restricted cooperation, and because of that it has restricted communication, and because of that it has restricted cognition. It works also the other way around. If you have restricted cognition, and restricted means you don't think about this third anymore. There is no third, therefore there is no number. You have you, yourself, as an I, and you have somebody else. This is the you, but this is a competitor. Take care. Yeah? And it means you don't think about the structure of society. The structure is, in reality, thus that competitive relations are furthered. But you don't think about this. You don't reflect it. You just behave like this, and therefore you don't see this. Very reflect about this. What means can I do to get more money from the other? Okay? And then you also talk with the others in that way. You just want to present yourself in the best way. I want to sell you something. I have the best machine front you ever will get. I can tell you, please trust me. And I think, no, okay, you will trust me or not. So you see what society makes by us. Yeah? I taught in communication science 6 years. They had PR, public relations. I was sick when I saw one film they made about the course they are doing. They had to dress businesslike. They had to make good portfolios in real ones to look at it, and they had to do as if they would have to market a certain good which they just invented. And they had to try to speak in a way that the customer is satisfied. There's also a good movie in Austria. I'm not sure if you can see this. It's called Alphabet. It's a director who made also films like Let's Make Money was the second movie of his, and the first movie was We Feed the World. So all of them are political topics. And this alphabet is on education. And he says all education globally on the whole planet goes in the wrong direction. It's just you educate the people for cheating each other. And they are competitors. They learn at school already to be competitors and not to work together, not to cooperate. A very good movie. I can, Alphabet. So if you find it somewhere, I really recommend this to you. So this is the way how we are educated, yeah? And therefore this does not work here. So cooperation works only if you cooperate with others against others. Only then there's cooperation. This cooperation is a means for competition and not the other way around. Okay, this is how it should be in, well, new cosmopolitanism it is called, because cosmopolitanism is always sometimes said it is very idealistic, very utopianistic and so on. And therefore what we find now, the real relationships that develop, it's called new cosmopolitanism. Yeah? Therefore I call it also new cosmopolitanism. So what you see here is that what I told to you before, you as an example, I think of the whole structure and then I think of you. And you might do the same backward. And so we can cooperate. We can try to have the same assumptions, or we can try to discuss this. Then we discuss this here. What is my assumption of the whole? What is your assumption? And then can we find some agreement? And this is that we also are able to recognize what is up there in the third, the structure. This is a very important issue. A cell cannot think about the liver it is part of. But we can think about the whole system of our society, and we can try to change it, and we can try to find others in order to make a change. So the conclusion is, I'm ready. A global brain must facilitate extended reflection so as to bring a global sustainable information society about. Thank you. I'm sorry, it was maybe too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have 30 minutes left for discussion. I'm sure there are plenty of questions.
So I interrupted you. You wanted to have. There were some.
No, it is no point anymore.
What do you think about inventing a new currency in order to get better sustainability? The question is maybe
economic currency, euro or whatever.
Yeah, a new form of currency. Do you think about?
I'm not an economist, but I read an article by somebody whom I really believe in. I had him also at my last conference 2 years ago in Vienna. He's an economist, he's in pension now, and he was at the Research Institute for Economic Studies, but he's the only left one, that's to say, yeah. Interestingly, he's the son of a conservative journalist, but he developed in that way. And he says, it's not the currency, it's not the euro which is in crisis. Europe is in crisis because of the people, because of those forces who want to, I would now translate it in that picture, who don't think about the third, who just think of how can I cheat the other. For instance, Germany is the one state who has profited very much about the relationships, about the economic relationships, because it had gathered the eastern part of Germany and it had very low wages, thank you, and therefore it could export, so it was export oriented, and this export orientation was too big and it ruined the Greek economy, for instance, yeah? And now Germany does say to the Greeks, okay, you have to pay and so on. And look at Greece, the systems fall apart now. The health system is falling apart. The educational system is falling apart. It's incredible. This is because there are forces within the European Union who say, okay, everybody has to look for his own fortune. Why should we be solidaric with them? And this is the wrong policy. We need to be solidaric with them, and I think that in a certain way the change of euro would not help. It's also that I think that Germany cannot want to have Greek, for instance, excluded by the European, from the euro, let's say from the euro, or by the European Union, whatever, because there are debts which should be paid back. And if there would be this exclusion, then Germany would be not so good off, not so well off. Yeah? Therefore, it has an interest not to change the currency. And I think it's not about currency. It's about the relationships between the states which had different developments. And are you solidaric or not?
How do you ensure that the kind of asymmetry between individuals and society in this last slide of reflexivity in communalism? Because the danger is always that society will dominate the individual. It's almost obvious what mechanism you can install in order to ensure that the state in our present will not dominate the individual.
Yeah, it's a practical question of how to democratize society. So it must go in the direction of more democracy and better democracy. Whatever steps there might be, I'm not so sure about. There is a big discussion if you would like to have more so-called less representative democracy and more votes, for instance, and more like in Switzerland. This is something which also would help the populist right-wing parties. So it's not as easy to give a concrete answer. So what I said is just in a philosophical way, how should it look like? And if you have a concrete solution, you should always measure it according to the philosophical norms, principles which are...
Yes, classic democracy presupposes equality between all individuals, no matter what they contribute or not contribute to society, etc. So
okay.
There are very deep problems in this.
That's good, yeah. So there are some movements who go in this direction, no? Gemeinwohlökonomie, it's called.
What is it?
Commonwealth?
Commonwealth.
Oh, I don't know, maybe it's the wrong translation. There are some Christian groups who say that there should be basic income to all people, and if they work, they get more. But so far, there's no basic income.
So
we have.
You don't have to work in order to have a living.
Yeah, that's the essence of that movement.
I can sympathize with this. I can sympathize with this.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Is the global brain theory concept which is being established here now a threat to your system or an opportunity?
It's not a threat.
It's an opportunity.
It's not an opportunity, it's a necessity. The global brain is a necessary part of what I would label the global sustainable information society. The global sustainable information society is not it's a vision, but it's not a blueprint of the new society. It just says, if we don't fulfill these three conditions, these three criteria of globality, sustainability, and informationality, then we cannot solve the global challenges, we cannot master them, and therefore we need them. And to get informationalized, that is to get the right information we need a collective intelligence on the level of humanity. And that means we need a global brain. So it is part of that.
I was thinking about the problems you were saying about informatization, was it? The bond problem. And if I do the equivalence with your last slide, the bond would be just reflecting on the structure and where we are in the structure.
Good. Yes, that's it.
Because I was going to ask you if you see other things that have to be there. These are like the values we want to have, and well, this bond is reflecting on where we are, what is our role, and we have to care about the others. So, in order to get to that global brain, we should promote this bonding mechanism on the actual information systems. That would be a good point to start, to do something about it. But I don't know, maybe we can identify other values, criteria, or...
Well, in our model of the global brain, there is kind of an implicit bonding mechanism. That is that in the mathematical model, you have agents that send each other challenges. If the second agent gets benefit from what he gets from the other one, the bond is strengthened, and then it becomes more likely that you would collaborate. So it's a kind of a strengthening of links that turn out to be synergetic when both of them profit. And maybe in social media now, you might think of something more like that, like where the idea is not so much of making as many friends as possible, but kind of finding out who your real friends are, who are the people who are really reacting to the things you say and giving you stuff that you like, and maybe that might be one way to think of to make the social media more effective in bonding people.
But maybe one agent finds out that it is helpful for him to make the next step and to add on if he thinks on the possible social outcome. If he thinks, if he has a bigger picture of the whole thing. Not just, what I want to say is, it's not a problem of communication between me and you. It's not a problem of two people. It's a problem of control. So we need to get society in the right direction. That is, it needs to do certain things about climate change, about all and everything. So this is something which we should have in mind. And if I now work as an agent in a kind of, you talk about this stigmergy thing, and you say there's a propagation of a challenge, so somebody makes a kind of solution a little bit, and then the other comes about, and he finds out that he can add something to this, but you need to have certain aims, you need to have goals. That is, you need to, or maybe it would be nice to have at least similar goals. Yeah. So there is the term. It is called.
I have spoken about it in another paper where I call it alignment
Yes.
on goals.
Okay.
And there are
Very
certain
good.
systems that can help with that, but I'm not yet completely happy with that. It's one of the tricky parts. I mean, it's important that everybody has a value system. Those value systems are different between people, but they overlap in lots of things. I think everybody will agree that it's better that we wouldn't have global warming. Even those who disagree with the existence of global warming would probably say, yeah, well, if it existed, it would be better that it would not get out of control. So if you can somehow make these shared values more explicit and kind of more recognizable, more quantifiable.
Well,
that would help already.
What you're saying, Francis, is that we need just a system, a prediction system that will show each effect that you do, what are the possible futures that you were presenting there, the
That's a
potential
different matter.
futures.
That's a different, but that's not the same as a shared value system. That would be a helpful tool. That's what the accounting calls the what was the name? The living out simulator or something like that. It's kind of a tool in which you would put in a number of data about what you have now, and it would kind of predict it would go on, and then you would say, okay, I don't like that, let's change this and
It
this.
doesn't change.
But that's not the same as making your values, aligning your values. The alignment
right.
of the values
That's-
is something that typically happens in social interaction. You talk with people and you come to the conclusion that actually you agree about these and these things and you decide to collaborate. It usually takes a lot of time.
That's
it would be
being
easier
sure.
if that could be
Yeah.
facilitated, automatized.
That's being sure that everybody would be choosing the same kind of potential future and not different ones. That
No,
you
I wouldn't go
propose
so
the same
far of
thing.
choosing the same future because you would never get
Right,
people
never
to agree
get it.
about one specific future. But you could have them agree about certain general values like reduction of poverty, reduction of pollution, increase of healthcare. There are lots of things that people, I think, would agree about. And then you would need to kind of prioritize those and make them very visible and very measurable. And that would help a lot, I think. I don't yet know exactly how to do it. I mean, I have seen some systems that would help in that, but there is not yet a miracle solution as far as I'm concerned.
At the moment, there is many structure mediating between ego and alter. Government should do that. For instance, Google does that in a way. In a global, and it's global also. And a predictive system like this would do that kind of thing. At the moment, it doesn't work. According to you, why doesn't it work? Why that kind of structure we have now don't work?
No, it's. I would say it's those values who are dominant in our society, and these values are saying it's the private which values and not the other way around. You could say, for instance, if you go back to Christian, what is it called? Christian social thinking. They say, okay, you can have property, private property, but only if you do not do harm to the society, to social aims, to solidarity and so on, for instance.
Define how.
Sorry?
Define how. If I have a bigger car, does it harm society than having a smaller car? In a manner of speaking, it does.
There's
But
a kind of Verpflichtung, there's a kind of duty. If you have something private, then you have duty against the society. Yeah? And you have to, also the Indians, for instance, they say, okay, we borrowed the whole thing from Earth, and we have to take care of it. And if you slaughter something, then you say, okay, thank you to God or whatever, whoever, and that you give this to me. It's not mine. So there are certain, for instance, also if you look, where did I read it? There's David Graeber. He's an anarchist anthropologist. He has written a big book on debt, 5,000 years debt, and he has written other books, and he did work and about these ancient communities and about different social forms of coming to an agreement. For instance, the Indian tribes did it in a different way. When they do it, they sit as long together as they find one solution, and everybody says, okay, that's a good solution. For instance, but there are also different forms of it. And this is something we should talk about.
Can you write his name?
David Graeber. Graeber. B-E-R.
Okay.
Graeber.
Martin Graeber.
Sorry?
David Martin Graeber.
Martin? No, David, I think.
It's two names.
Aha, maybe. Yeah, I don't know. And yeah, no. For instance, if I talk about collectivism and individualism, so you see that for instance, the Chinese society is very collectivistic in a way, and this is not as bad. We think this is bad, but if you look at this if you have a closer look to this, it's very interesting. So they found out that if you, for instance, if you have an incentive for a group of them to work, and the incentive is for the individuals, they get worse. They don't want to excel the group. They don't want to be better than the group. They want to. Then the firms came up with the idea to give the group a premium, and then it worked because everybody wants to do something for its group. So, well, there are many things one can discuss. And okay, goodbye. Thank you.
What about diversity in this kind of collectivist system? It seems that it hinders diversity, and you said diversity is good.
Mm-hmm.
So individualism is kind of promotes
No, I
diversity.
just wanted to say that individualism is a kind of ideology we have. We have drinking it with a mother milk here in our society.
But my question is it that bad as you present?
Is individualism that
Yeah,
bad?
should
Yes,
we
it is.
just make it disappear
Yes.
altogether?
It's just individualism why we have global warming.
Is there no, isn't you have egocentrism?
Yes.
Individualism. Individualism.
Oh, it's the
is-
same.
No, it's not the same.
Okay. I use it the
Egocentrism
same.
is only individualism is my proper evaluation, but it's not against someone.
Well,
That's my
okay.
definition.
Okay. No, there is a solution to this. So I said it's unity through diversity. It's a kind of having a kind of harmony or dialectical relationship between individuals and society.
Mm.
So, for instance, if you take the Marxist terms in German, I think the English terms don't fit here. You talk about Individualisierung und Vergesellschaftung. That is societalization or socialization or whatever. That is, you need both. You need to be integrated in society, it's kind of community, in order to be able to become more individual, to work out your individualism, to say, yeah. But if you should not do it in contrast to society, we need the internet, we need, I don't know, all this stuff which are provided to us by society in order to become individuals.
Yes, but this is
it's the other way around. We also can help society to develop in certain directions.
But it's a kind of individuality that is always bound to certain norms.
It is always bound to.
It is always bound to certain norms and
Yeah.
values that are set by society. But we know that innovation and evolution many times takes a course that are beyond the norm or against the norm, etc. So how do you ensure that this kind of future mechanism, global brain mechanism, will be
Currently,
evolutive
it's just-
and innovative? Because it seems to me that if we individuals consider society too much, so we comply, we restrict ourselves by complying to certain norms and values that society set by agreements. Suppose it's democratic. I am concerned about the possibility of breaking through, of creating breakthrough situations, of innovations, because innovations or revolutionary steps are always against the norm.
Yeah.
So
Currently,
that's a problem that.
No, it's not a big problem, because if you remember this self-organization cycle in a
Yes.
social system between
Yes.
the two levels,
Yes.
you have always here the innovation which is the bottom-up level, bottom-up arrow or process. Yeah, you have the individuals who do something new, and they try to find out something. And also, if they are enabled, they do something new, which then feeds back to the structure of society. And what we are now facing is, this is what I would say, the big values here are capitalist values, which say private ownership is good. And this is our holy, what is it? Our holy grail.
It's
Grail. Okay, holy grail, for instance. Yeah,
but
that's
ownership
our
is a
worship.
result.
But what is it?
No, ownership.
Ownership.
Ownership is a result. Initiative is the thing that makes individuals stand out. That they initiate new steps, and they enjoy the fruits of their actions.
They should do it for the sake of society and not for their own sake only. This is what I would like to say. That is, you can bring these two things together. I do something which is very extraordinary, and I like to do it because I have a very good idea, but this idea helps society and helps others, so to say, to get a better life. And then it's okay. If I just think of making money, I can do certain applications here which are not good for society. We have also detrimental applications.
Yes, there is an example. I don't know if you're familiar with this. The case of Bitcoin.
Of what?
Bitcoin. You know about Bitcoin?
No.
It's a new form of currency. It is not centralized. It is not produced by banks, but it is produced by an algorithm. Which is distributed over many participants, and it's an alternative kind of currency. Many banks and states right now, and now it becomes more apparent that it's becoming powerful and influential, this kind of currency. They don't like it. They say it is disruptive to the financial institutions. So I was interested to ask you, but if you are not...
I have no idea about this.
Yeah, I was interested to ask whether it is beneficial to society or not beneficial to society. How to think about it?
If it is disruptive,
What will it overcome? What will it overcome that Bitcoin?
The hegemony of banks in producing the means of exchange. Banks are producing money, and money is the means of exchange in the economy. And this is an alternative kind of money. When the banks gives you money, immediately you are in debt. So everything starts from debt. But if you have a kind of currency that is just distributed and you don't need a central authority in order to produce it, there is no debt there, just exchange. You create the currency in a collaborative, distributed manner.
Yeah, it's those who have the biggest computers that can create the most of it, so it's not quite fair.
No, if you look into the algorithms, it was a fact that at the beginning the computer power that you have is influential, but right now it's not anymore, because if you have 10 times more computing power, you don't have really a big advantage over those that have. So.
Do you know ATTAC, this movement?
I heard about it, I don't remember.
This is not in here, I don't know where it is. In Austria we have this ATTAC. They talk about economy and how to change economy. And there's one guy in Austria who is very, Felber is his name, and he's very often in TV and so on. He's not a Marxist or so, but he has very good ideas, and he will now, they have now a movement, and they will found a bank. Next year they will do it, and this bank will be a democratic bank, and it is also called the Democratic Bank. And so that means that there will be a change in policy and also a change inside the bank and so on. So it will be really an alternative bank. There's in Germany, I guess, there's a kind of alternative bank which grew out of a GDR bank. You can read it in Wikipedia. but I don't know about this. But it's interesting that there are certain alternative ideas of these alternative groups to try also to make new instruments. And I'm sure I will change with all my accounts to this new bank. Yeah, currently it's because of the crisis, our associations, which are non-for-profit associations, we had exemptions by the bank. We did not need to pay the 3 months fee for certain things and so on. Now we pay, I think in the year we pay between 100 and 200 euros just for making all and everything by internet banking, you know. The bank doesn't do anything with me.
They install the system.
Sorry?
If they install the system, it's sort of what
They installed the system.
they install the system.
They
It
installed the
costs money.
system. Okay, no. No.
They did.
And now you have, you know, what you get, the interest rate is below the inflation rate. It's very, so everybody is now, in a way, enteignet. What is it in German?
Mad.
Not
Angry.
Not angry, no. We are, my property is on the bank. It's my money. But they take more than
You
it is
shouldn't
worth.
think about that as your money. It's an individualistic view.
It's an individualistic.
Shouldn't take it out of it.
Okay, I suppose we stop here. Let's thank Wolfgang for his presentation.
Thank you.